Hey, in this lesson, we're going to be setting up the basic HTML web page and also looking at the data that we're going to be requesting using the AJAX request that's going to be loading onto the page. So first of all, I've created an index.html file, so it's completely blank. Just created it, and I'm using brackets to load the live preview. And if you are using brackets, that's just under here, under File, Live Preview. And you don't necessarily need to do with the local machine, but it's always better when you're connecting to various APIs that you are using the HTTP protocol over the file protocol. And the file protocol is the one that you just go over to the index file, find it on your system, and open it within the browser, and that will give you the file and the path where it's located on your computer. So if you do have the opportunity, make sure that you do have an option for local machine, and this will make sure that your web APIs connect a lot smoother. And in this case, this particular one, this is an API that I've set up, and this endpoint is running from a Google script, and it's returning back a bunch of course content that I have. So it's got a listing of all the courses that I have, and it's essentially a feed of all the course content. And this is the API that we're going to be working with. Also keep in mind that APIs could vary, so there might be some differences within the APIs. And this particular one, it's going to have at the bottom, it's going to have pages, previous, null, next to. So this will give us the ability to go through the various pages of content. And there are quite a few different pages of content. We've got a status of 200 that's being returned, and then all of the data. So this is the content that we're going to output on the page and we're going to use within the page. Now you're welcome to connect to another API, another different endpoint, or you can use the one that I'm going to be highlighting within the course. I'll include a link for that within the code, within the JavaScript code. And also keep in mind that APIs will vary. So this particular one is always going to be looking for additional pages, and it's going to load the pages in chunks. So you might have an API where you can query each item and then move to the next item, move to the next item. So this is all depending on what the API is that you're looking at. So now we're just going to set up a basic HTML page and create some HTML structure. So we've got a title, we've got a head here, and then within the body, we're going to have a head section, so a header, and this is going to be all of top content, and have a section, and this is where all of the main content will go. And when we load the page initially, we're going to take the first page of data and we're going to load it within the main content area. And it's also going to need to have the ability to scroll the content in order for this to work. So if you don't have enough content on your page to make it scroll, to see the scroll bar, then this isn't going to work, because we're going to be waiting for the scroll bar to hit the bottom. And if it doesn't have an option to go down to the bottom, then you're not going to be able to load any additional content. So that's the one thing to keep in mind. And you can also focus it on various sections, but in this case, we're going to be building out for the entire web page. Let's add in a little bit of styling so we can have some size to the content that we're loading, and set up the header. And of course, you can customize this as needed. I'm just setting up a real basic setup for some content for a web page. Also, we're going to do the header, the footer. It's going to be very similar to the header with some differences. And this is, of course, footer. And the main content is just contained within section. So we'll give the section some height as well. So it's got some minimum height, and there right away we already have the scroll bar there at the side. So that's good enough for the styling for now. And then we're going to be loading the content into this main section. So I'm going to give it a class of container, so that using JavaScript we can select this particular section in case we add additional sections into the project. And then lastly, let's link out to a script file and have a source, and then we'll create the script file. So the source will be, we'll call it app.js, and this is where all the magic is going to happen. This is where we're loading the JavaScript content, and you can of course customize the HTML and the styling as needed. And it isn't the focus really of the upcoming lessons, as we do want to focus on JavaScript. So the upcoming lessons are going to be strictly JavaScript, and we're going to entirely focus on the contents of JavaScript. So that's coming up in the next lesson. We're going to work with the app.js, and I'll just create that as a placeholder, so completely blank file, app.js, and make sure that it's linked. So I usually like to do an alert just so that I ensure that my JavaScript file is linked. And there we get the pop-up. So we're all good to go to move on to the next lesson. So go ahead and set up your project and get ready to move to the JavaScript sections, and that's coming up next.